Hello, my name is Marcus Cox, and this is an introduction to a webinar we had on Saturday on the weekend. And the title of it was The Hormones of Fat and Leptin and Insulin. And that was with Dr. Alan Organ, who was an MD and a PhD. He was a pediatrician for over 30 years. And he was also a professor of and taught med students in the Kansas City area. Very astute researcher. He worked with Linus Pauling, who, if you're familiar with Linus Pauling's work, he was a two-time Nobel Prize winner on his medical research, and Dr. Organ actually worked with him. This is a picture of Dr. Organ. I've known him for several years now. That's him sailing in the Kansas City area. You can see his great smile. Wonderful person. And I said he actually helped my wife and I lose over 90 pounds. This is a picture of me after losing 62 pounds. You can see on the picture on the left there, I was actually in a lot of trouble. I was over 250 pounds and actually in a great deal of pain, even though I'm smiling there. My legs were very swollen and I was getting short of breath, and I had a mild heart attack on the way home from work one day and things like that. So weight loss is a very serious business if you don't pay attention to it and stop it before it continues. I'm fortunate to have gotten this program and have the help of Dr. Organ to help me lose over 62 pounds and keep it off. I've been under 200 for ever since that diet. So that's a wonderful thing. I tried all these diets for decades, and I was never able to lose that much weight or keep it off. And on that note, I'm going to turn the webinar over to Dr. Organ and let him give you the overview on the fat hormones.
Thank you, Marcus. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. I picked this topic today. This is a repeat because it seems that the information on leptin and insulin changes almost daily. There was a New York Times article about 2 weeks ago showing that on the reality TV show, The Biggest Loser, that the majority of those that exercised and changed their diet and did everything to the extreme have, at the end of the contest, regained their weight and then some. So I started turning around and trying to figure out how does this all fit in with the science that we know. So I thought I would go ahead and let you know a little bit about the relationship between leptin and insulin and storage and burning of fat, and why we have problems losing weight and keeping it off. And then I'll end it with why all the biggest losers gain their weight back, because scientifically you would expect it based on some of the latest findings. So let's go on. This slide is a great slide because this is yo-yo dieting. Okay, you diet, you get a metabolism slowdown, and this is important to remember because this is going to play with what happens with the biggest losers. You end your diet, you go back to normal eating, you gain the weight, and then you have to diet again. So it go up and down and up and down. Well, some people cry to their doctors. You'll lose weight on any strict diet, but mostly water from crying. And that's because most doctors, most healthcare professionals, and a lot of nutritionists don't know how. What I'm telling you is that what I'm taught and what I was taught in medical school, and that's that if you want to lose weight, you have to burn more calories than you consume. That's simplistic, and it doesn't work because as soon as you stop doing that, you regain it back very quickly because the body has a thermostat that tells us how much we're supposed to eat normally, and it's different for all of us. So I want to go back and remind everybody of a biblical story. When I last told this several weeks ago, we had just finished the Jewish festival of Passover, and if you remember the Old Testament, a young man was sold into slavery in Egypt and ended up in prison, but he can interpret dreams. And Pharaoh comes to him and says, Joseph, I had a dream of 7 fat cows and 7 skinny cows. What does that mean? And nobody could interpret that correctly, and Joseph did. And now you're thinking, why am I bringing up the Old Testament on weight loss? Well, the body has an on switch, not an on-off switch in terms of eating. And in the biblical story, in the day, the 7 fat cows represented days of plenty. So food was stored for the next 7 years for fear that in the 7 thin cow era, there wouldn't be enough to feed everybody in Egypt. And it turned out to be true. And during the 7 lean years where crops were devastated, there was enough stored food that everybody survived. And that's what the body does. Okay? So let's look on. I'll tell you more about that in a little bit. Let's look at what's actually happening in this country. This is another representation of yo-yo dieting. 2/3 of us who lose weight on diets gain it back in a year. 98% gain back and more within 2 years. And again, this is representative of what happened on The Biggest Loser. 30% are trying to lose weight. 30% are trying to prevent gaining it back, as Americans spend $30 billion per year on diets and weight control programs. This is what I consider the 30-30-30 program. Okay? Now, what caused us to...
I raised 20.
Marcus, is there something in the background? Now I don't hear it. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm muted.
All right. We have been bombarding our body with the wrong kinds of food and filled with toxins and non-nutritive substances, and we get sick and blame it on our genes. I mean, if you remember my personal story, I divide my life up into 3 parts. The first part was when I was young and carefree. But I also knew that my father died at age 53 of a heart attack. My grandfather died of a heart attack at 50 years of age. And then recently I found out my great-grandfather died at 47 of a heart attack. So when I was in medical school and I turned 25, I turned to my wife and I said, my life is half over. She said, how can you say that? I said, it's in my genes. My father, my grandfather, my great-grandfather. So I didn't care what I did in that first part of my life. I ate anything I wanted. I drank anything I wanted. I did anything I wanted. And I didn't care because I figured by the time I was 50 years of age or younger, my time was done. So I wanted to get done as much as I could. Well, when I entered my middle phase of my life, I decided, I wanted to build something. I wanted to see my kids graduate high school, which my father never did. My great-grandfather and my grandfather obviously didn't see that either. And I wanted to see them watch, I wanted to graduate from college. I wanted to, have my kids see things that I did. And so I started changing my lifestyle, but not real well, still knowing that it's my genes. I'm going to die at a young age. Well, when I entered my last part of my life, which I expect to be a long period of time, I don't have any heart disease. I beat my genes. And how did I beat my genes? I learned about weight control. I learned about what fats you should eat. I learned about detoxing my body. As I said on the corporate body call Thursday night for RX, that detoxification is necessary because the body's response to toxins that we eat, drink, put on our skin, breathe, is to make fat to store the toxins. So when you diet, you're really doing a nutritional rebalancing. You're getting rid of the toxins, and therefore you don't need the fat as much. Okay? So toxic buildup is really the root cause of all evil and all disease. It's not so much all the other things. So we can't blame it on our genes. We have a chance to correct this. The overweight rates in North America have grown, with overweight and obese people projected to be 74% of our population in 2020. That's only 4 years. And that's going to be almost 30% increase in just 50 years. I mean, that's terrible. And part of it is the fact that certain foods are very cheap. I can't fault McDonald's for having a dollar meal. Well, the food's not good, but there are people that can't afford to eat the way they should eat to avoid the toxins, to avoid the improper nutrients. But to survive, they have to find a cheap way of doing it. And I'm really getting kind of scared because in the last week or so, I've seen numerous food recalls because of improper production and bacterial contamination that has led to some deaths. So I'm really concerned about going out to a restaurant, not having the wait staff or the cook staff wash their hands properly, or if you've ever been back in a kitchen, everybody wears gloves. Well, those vinyl gloves contain toxins and it gets into the food. So even if you go to an organic place, I'd almost rather have somebody just wash their hands and be barehanded than put on a pair of vinyl gloves and put toxins into the foods that they prepare for me. Well, we have a modern epidemic now. It's called metabolic syndrome. And as you can see, it consists of hyperglycemia or high blood sugar, high cholesterol, and high blood pressure. It's a triad. 25% of all adults in the U.S. and Canada have metabolic syndrome. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in the U.S. project that 33% of the children born today in the United States will become diabetic. Nearly 50% of the blacks and Hispanics, and latest projections from the CDC and I believe the Census Bureau show that 100% of the Native American and Alaskan Native populations in the United States will all have diabetes by the year 2050, which is not that far away. 45% of diabetes in children today is type 2, not type 1 that used to be when I was in training and practice, but type 2, which is the adult onset type of diabetes. We actually have two other types of diabetes that are important. One is gestational diabetes that can go on and lead to diabetes in the children or in mom after she delivers. And what some people are calling type 3 diabetes, and that's Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's disease, or a severe form of dementia, occurs when certain sugars called amyloid are built up in the brain, and it disrupts what are called neurofibril bundles. These are nerve cells that transmit information throughout the nervous system. Well, the sugar blocks these, and you lose your memory. And that's a very severe form of dementia. But if you're not at risk for diabetes and you don't get the hyperglycemia or high blood sugar, statistics show that you don't get the Alzheimer's disease either. Now, this is a very complicated diagram. It shows what's called energy homeostasis, and it's controlled by signals coming from fat tissue, the pancreas, which is one of our digestive and endocrine organs, and our GI tracts. And all I really want you to know on here is just several things. You can see insulin here, for those that are looking at the slides, goes back and tells the brain something. And here we have leptin that goes back and tells the brain something, but it also goes to the vagus nerve. Now, the vagus nerve is very important. It controls your heart rate, and it controls a lot of things that occur in digestion. It innervates most of the digestive tract. So when you turn around, you see that grizzly bear behind you. It's called the fight or flight reflex. Your eyes dilate, your heart beats quickly. You don't digest any food in your stomach because that's waste right now, but you should have energy stores in terms of stored sugar called glycogen in your muscles and your heart, and then you have fat stores so that you can very quickly take those stores and convert it into usable energy to have your brain say to your legs, don't fail me now, and you get out of there. But the vagus nerve controls heart rate. So when the heart speeds up for the vagus nerve, the digestive tract slows down. And then there's one other one that you hear all the time. You hear it on Dr. Oz a lot. It's called ghrelin, G-H-R-E-L-I-N. Ghrelin causes your stomach to growl. So you end up telling your brain, I'm hungry. I need to go find something to eat. Leptin, we used to believe that it's just that turnoff. I've had enough to eat. It really is more like the thermostat of your energy in your body. It tells your brain how much energy is stored and how much more energy you need to go out and procure. So as you can see, energy homeostasis is controlled by a lot of things. You have the peripheral signals from the GI tract, the gut, that include things that you've probably never heard of. Peptide YY, glucagon-like peptide, that's called GLP-1, cholecystokinin, which is a hormone that aids in digestion. I mean, you've not heard of these things, but there are probably 50 or more hormones and enzymes that are involved in digestion and procurement of energy. So, but the most important ones seem to be insulin and leptin, okay? Now, let's talk a little more about leptin. Sure, it was discovered in 1974, so the research on that is a little over 40 years of age, and I believe it actually won a Nobel Prize for the doctors who discovered it. It's been called the obesity hormone or the fat hormone, but it's also called the starvation hormone, okay? And of course, there are a lot of people that think that this is blockbuster research, that if we could supplement leptin, that you could turn off the signals that the brain's emitting to the body that says go out and find more calories. Except that the leptin supplements that are on the market are probably bogus. No treatment has really come out of this. So again, leptin is not our obesity hormone. It's our starvation hormone, and this was written by Robert Lustig. He's a pediatrician colleague of mine, professor of pediatrics at the University of California, San Francisco, and he's a member of the Endocrine Society's Obesity Task Force. Leptin's a protein. It's made in our fat cells. It circulates in the bloodstream and goes to the brain. Leptin is the way our fat cells tell our brains that our energy thermostat, or as he likes to call it, the adipostat, adipose is another way of saying fat. It tells, leptin again, tells our fat cells, or from our fat cells, tells our brain our energy thermostat is set right. Now remember that. That's very important, because when I come back at the end and tell you why the Biggest Losers failed, you'll see why that thermostat's important. And instead of the normal on-off that the thermostat does, so in the summertime and here in Kansas when it gets to be 100 degrees, thermostat when the house heats up tells the air conditioner to come on. when it reaches the set point, or that thermostat that says that the temperature of the house is set right, the air conditioner goes off. So it oscillates back and forth between turning it on, turning it off, and it does just the opposite in the wintertime. When it gets cold, the heater comes on. So I will come back and put this all together at the end. So let's look at every diet that's simplified. It's 3 parts: how much you eat, what you eat, and how much you burn. I'd like to say that all foods are not created equal. Some are good for us. Some provide the same number of calories but are bad for us. Some of them obviously contain toxins which are bad for us. And how much do we burn? These are the 3 things. All right? So I was taught calories in versus calories burned tells you what your energy expenditure or energy storage is. So when someone comes up to you and says, "Gee, Alan, looks like you put on a couple pounds of weight," I just tell them, I'm just in energy storage. I'm just storing some energy for the future. All right? Again, what do we eat? Sugar or any carbohydrate increases fat storage or delays fat burning. Okay? If I were to ask you, what does insulin do? And I haven't really talked about that yet. Insulin, yeah, it does reduce our blood sugar. But more importantly, it tells our body how and when and where to store fat. Okay? Body chooses sugar over fat to burn. So there are a number of doctors out there, myself included, that believe fasting is good for the body. But I don't believe in those healthcare professionals that say, "Oh, Tuesdays and Saturdays you should not eat anything, just drink water," so that you put your body into a fast mode. I believe in what's called intermittent fasting. A lot of doctors do. And that means that from the time that you eat dinner to the time that you eat breakfast, if you don't consume any calories or very few calories, what ends up happening is your body goes from being a carbohydrate burning machine to a fat burning machine. So you've all heard, yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus. I like to say, yes, Virginia, you can lose weight when you sleep if you do it correctly. All right? And then the third part of this is how much you burn. Exercise increases how much you burn. Building muscle increases how much you burn 24/7. But now we're finding that exercise, as they did in the Biggest Losers, may be the thing that is harmful in terms of changing your energy thermostat. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So let's talk about those hormones of fat. While the Energizer Bunny runs on batteries, our bodies run strictly on hormones. Hormones tell our bodies to burn fat, lose weight, store fat, gain weight. And these 2 key hormones that I want to talk about that regulate food intake and energy balance in our bodies are insulin and leptin. Leptin, as I said before, comes from our fat cells, and these are called adipocytes. Insulin comes from our pancreas. When we understand these hormones, it gives us a little insight into how diet and lifestyle choices help us achieve and maintain a healthy weight. Again, it's not so much calories in versus calories burned. To give you that homeostasis, it's a little more intricate than that oversimplification. All right? Leptin acts as a negative feedback control for fatness. It's our thermostat, our adipostat in our bodies, just like a thermostat is a device in the homes. Our fat cells release leptin in direct proportion to the amount of stored body fat. And this makes sense because leptin's job is to tell the brain how good our energy stores are. So if our energy stores are sufficient, we don't need to search for any more calories. So leptin tells our brains that we have enough energy stored and to stop eating and get moving. And if you look at the vicious cycle of leptin resistance, and that's what happens when we become obese, we become leptin resistant. The signaling back to the brain that we have enough calories, enough energy stored, doesn't exist. The brain looks at that hormone and says, I don't know who you are. I'm not going to listen to you. Okay? So you can see hunger. We eat more. We store fat in our fat cells called adipocytes. We secrete something called CRP or C-reactive protein. It binds leptin. Leptin can't cross the blood-brain barrier, and we can't tell the brain we've had enough to eat. So we continue to eat. Yes, our body can become leptin resistant, and this happens from obesity, fasting. Remember that, consuming 2 calories. And again, we once thought that leptin told our brains to stop eating, but now it mediates. Our studies show that it mediates the adaptation to fasting. So fasting or consuming too few calories causes leptin resistance. Eating too much causes leptin resistance. Excuse me. Now let's look at insulin. What is the action of it? Well, again, most of us would remember that it lowers our blood sugar because diabetics have high blood sugar, don't they? Okay? That's only partially correct. It tells our brains whether or not to eat, and also tells the brain about the energy status of our bodies. If someone becomes insulin resistant, which is type 2 diabetes, you make insulin, but the body doesn't recognize its function. So when you eat food, you make insulin, cells resist the insulin, sugar gets stored as fat, you begin to feel tired and hungry, you eat more food. So when you lose weight properly by resetting your thermostat, by eating the proper foods, by detoxing, you can lose your insulin resistance and your blood sugars will go down. So we need to control insulin levels by avoiding high blood sugar, and this is important for regulating hunger. Remember, slow and steady wins the race in terms of weight loss, reducing leptin resistance and lessening the chances of weight rebound. And this is critical for weight loss. Okay? And this is, we have a world-class swimmer who has won more gold medals in swimming, Mr. Phelps, than anybody in the world. And at the end of the last Olympics, he decided he wanted to change his lifestyle. He found girls, found drugs, so he stopped exercising. He had been eating 20,000 calories a day. His body got used to that because his energy thermostat said, you need that number of calories to stay in what's called homeostasis, energy balance. Well, when he stopped swimming, his body still said, you need to eat 20,000 calories a day. So, guess what? He gained 50 or 60 pounds pretty quickly and was totally out of shape. He was tired, he was insulin resistant, he was leptin resistant. And it was only after he decided that he wanted to make another lifestyle change that he's now eating that amount, but he's back slim and trim, and hopefully will win a number of gold medals down in Brazil. So that's the PowerPoint presentation on leptin and insulin. So let's now go back to what happened with the Biggest Losers. What was found scientifically on these individuals is that as they lost weight, and if you never saw the program, they were put on diets. They had nutritionists working with them and exercise therapists. They were put on diets, and they exercised tremendously. Well, instead of just losing the weight, the body compensated, just like the 7 fat cows and the 7 thin cows, and told the brain, you don't have to have as many calories now to be in energy balance as before. So the basal amount of calories that the individuals were supposed to eat got lowered, so that when they stopped exercising, exercising and went back to a normal diet, they ballooned back up. They were saving energy for the time that things changed again, because the body remembered what had happened before. So that's why they all failed, and then some of them regained more weight. So you're probably asking now, what are we supposed to do? Well, we have some wonderful physicians and scientists and nutritionists that work with our company, and we have a series of supplements that actually help us reset our energy thermostat. I've talked about this in the past before. Once we lose the weight and we don't have to be on some of the supplements as before, our lifestyles have changed to the point where we've reset our energy thermostat, and our body reacts to that. So we don't have to worry about the 7 fat cows and the 7 thin cows. We're getting the calories that we need in the proper foods that are toxic free, that have things in it that doctors have told us for the last 50 or 60 years you shouldn't eat. God forbid you should eat saturated fat. Well, I have to tell you a cute story. Not many of you know why margarine was invented, but back in the day before my father died, he was told by his doctor to cut out margarine, or I cut out butter and use margarine, because margarine wouldn't do what butter did. However, the FDA had originally approved margarine for fattening up ducks, chickens, geese, so that they could be sold much plumper. Problem with margarine and feeding them margarine was that it killed the fowl. So the FDA said to the farmers, you cannot use margarine, which is one molecule away from being plastic, to these animals anymore. But it's perfectly safe to substitute for butter in humans. So that's why it's on our table. If you take a stick of butter or a stick of margarine and stick it out in the ground, come back a week or two later, not a single bug will be around it. They know that it's not good to eat. It's dangerous. So eating the right saturated fats are important, because fat is important in that energy balance. Fat is important to make every one of the outer coverings of each and every one of our 600 trillion cells. And without the right fat, and one of those fats is cholesterol, the body doesn't do well. Cholesterol is involved as the backbone in a number of hormones, including cortisol, or cortisone as you know it, testosterone, estrogen, and a lot of intermediate metabolites of those two hormones. So if you don't want to make estrogen, you don't want to make testosterone, and men and women make both of the hormones at the same time, go ahead and reduce your cholesterol. My physician once told me that he wanted me to get my cholesterol level down as close to zero as possible. And he didn't have any heart disease, and he didn't have any problems with cholesterol, yet he was on a statin to bring his cholesterol down to 50 or 60. And I turned to him and I said, Michael, don't you want to make testosterone and cortisol and the estrogen your body needs? He says, well, what's cholesterol have to do with that? I said, you need to go back to medical school and learn biochemistry. So that's what we need to do. We need to detox, because again, fat storage stores toxins. So as you begin to lose weight, you also put those toxins back in the bloodstream, and that can cause problems. I once had somebody call me and say, you know that crap you sold me? It made me sick. I said, did you lose weight? Yeah, I lost a lot of weight, but it made me sick. I said, good. He says, what do you mean good? I said, it's because your toxins are being released. You're not detoxing adequately. So as I explained Thursday night, how often should you detox? Just once. From the day you take your first breath to the day you take your last breath. It's a continual process. Marcus, that sums up leptin, insulin, and the biggest losers.
Alan, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. I lost control of my screen here. There's someone making a lot of noise there. I don't know who that is, but
Sounds like someone's making a shake.
Yes. Good. Morning shake. Very good. So that was really excellent. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Oregon. Appreciate
My
that.
pleasure. My pleasure.
But I'll tell you, there's so much to this that most people have no idea what's going on in weight loss. So it really makes a difference to learn this.
Absolutely. That's why we have a good team. We have people that all have interest in this, all have scientific credentials, and it's helping people, not selling crud.
So does anybody have any questions?
Hi, Dr. Orkin. This is Judy. Hi.
Hi, Judy. Good morning.
Good morning. I have a question regarding detox.
Uh-huh.
Is there? What are your thoughts on taking the detox product that's in the 3X program in the morning versus in the evening?
It doesn't really matter when you take it. You just need to make sure that you take it 2 hours before you take any medications, if you're on medications, or 2 hours afterwards, and you wouldn't take it at the same time that you take your supplements because they could be bound up also. For severe toxic overload, you can take Restore X twice a day. So it really doesn't matter. What happens is your body has two ways of getting rid of toxins. One is to get rid of it through the kidneys, and one is to get rid of it through the liver. The liver detoxifies it, puts it in the GI tract, and ultimately it's excreted with the rest of your waste. But if it's still in the GI tract, and the GI tract moves a lot slower than the urinary tract, you have the possibility of reabsorbing those toxins again. So, it really doesn't matter as long as that product with the zeolite is in your GI tract. It's easier to take it in the morning, so you go ahead and take it first thing, and some of us use it to brush our teeth with too, because in the all through the night you're getting rid of toxins, and a lot of them end up in your mouth. That's why sometimes you wake up with a foul taste in your mouth. You're getting rid of the toxins, and so the Restore X will help then. But it really doesn't matter.
Okay.
It's just you wake up in the morning, you have a routine. You take your detox, you brush your teeth, you wait a little bit, you get your shake, you take your supplements. And if you do it on a regular basis, your body gets used to it. Now, that brings up a good point. Besides the zeolite that's in there, which is not absorbed by the body, there are things that are. The omega-3s, the essential fatty acids that are in the chia seeds, they're absorbed without digestion. They're just they're wonderful for that. There are all sorts of vitamins and antioxidants that are in the other ingredients. The ginger is there to help with gastrointestinal distress from detox, but it also contains substances called gingerols that are very important for antioxidation. But this is important. But we have certain vitamins that you don't have to take every day. Vitamins A, D, E, and K. I mean, I recommend you do it because we need them all the time, but they're stored in our fat cells. So we don't get rid of them very quickly. But all the others, the B vitamins, vitamin C, they're all water soluble, which means that the vitamin that you take in the morning, you will urinate it out during the day and have to replenish it the next day. So I think you get better blood levels of these vitamins, which are important cofactors in all sorts of processes, including digestion. Take it twice a day so that your levels drop a little bit, but never to the point where in the morning they're at the lowest, and about midday they're at the highest. This way your level is more stable. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So
Any
any other questions out there? All right. So I want to thank everybody for attending this morning, and thank you, Dr. Organ, for your wonderful presentation here. And
You're
next week
welcome.
we're going to be featuring a special guest who's lost a lot of weight on the 3X program and is very excited about what we're up to here. So on that note, I'm going to sign off and hope to see you next week.
Goodbye, all.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Bye, and thank you.